300 men against 1,000,000. A narrow pass of rock and sea, a line drawn in the sand against a tidal wave of tyranny. This is the image of the Battle of Thermopylae that has been seared into our collective memory, a story of impossible odds, godlike warriors, and the ultimate sacrifice for freedom. You've seen the movies, you've heard the legends, but how much of that is real? How much of the story we know is a masterpiece of historical propaganda, forged in the fires of a legend that has grown for over 2,500 years? What is the true story of the 300? Welcome to the Histofy. Today we journey back to 480 BC to uncover the gritty, strategic, and far more complex reality of the battle that would define Western civilization. To understand Thermopylae, we must first understand the world it took place in. Long before Rome, the dominant power on Earth was the Achaemenid Persian Empire. It was the largest empire the world had ever seen, stretching from India to Ethiopia, from the Danube River to the Libyan desert. It was a multi-ethnic, technologically advanced superpower, ruled by one man, the King of Kings, Xerxes the Great, and Xerxes had his eyes set on Greece. 10 years earlier, his father Darius had tried to conquer the Greeks and had been humiliated. Defeated by a smaller Athenian army at the Battle of Marathon, for Xerxes this was more than a campaign. It was a matter of family honor and imperial destiny. Would not make the same mistakes. He amassed an army of a scale that seemed to defy reality. The ancient historian Herodotus claimed it was over 2 million strong, while modern historians believe the number was closer to 200,000 or 300,000. It was still an invasion force of unprecedented size, supported by a massive fleet of over 1,000 ships. This was not an army, it was a moving nation, designed to crush and absorb all of Greece. And what of Greece? It wasn't a unified country. It was a fractious collection of hundreds of rival city-states. It's Athens, a naval power with a radical new idea called democracy. Thebes, a powerful land army. Corinth, a wealthy trading hub. And of course, Sparta, a militaristic, isolated state ruled by two kings, whose entire society was engineered for one purpose: to create the finest soldiers on Earth. These city-states spent most of their time fighting each other. But faced with the Persian threat, they did the unthinkable. They formed a fragile alliance. It would stand together, or they would fall together. The Greek commanders knew they could not face the full might of the Persian army on an open plain. Their only hope lay in geography. They needed to find a bottleneck, a place where the Persians' overwhelming numbers would count for nothing. They found it at a narrow coastal pass called Thermopylae, which in Greek means the hot gates, named for the hot sulfur springs nearby. Here, the mountains met the sea, creating a pass so narrow that only a few men could fight abreast. It was the perfect defensive position. The Greek plan was not to win, it was to delay, hold the Persian army at the hot gates for as long as possible. Every day they held the pass was another day the main Greek armies could mobilize, and another day the Athenian navy, led by the brilliant strategist Themistocles, could prepare to face the Persian fleet at sea. The battle on land and the battle at sea were two parts of the same desperate plan. To hold this vital pass, the alliance sent a small advance force, and this is where the first great myth begins. It was not just 300 Spartans. The man chosen to lead this force was one of Sparta's two kings, Leonidas. He brought with him his royal bodyguard of 300 elite Spartan hoplites, all of them veterans. All of them fathers' two sons, to ensure their family lines would not be extinguished. But they were not alone. The total Greek force at Thermopylae numbered around 7,000 soldiers. They were a coalition of the willing, including 700 Thespians, 400 Thebans, 1,000 Phocians, and contingents from a dozen other city-states. The 300 were the elite, hardened core of this army, but it was a united Greek force that stood waiting for the storm. For 4 days, Xerxes waited, believing the tiny Greek force would simply see his massive army and flee in terror. They did not. On the 5th day, he ordered the attack. What followed was a masterclass in defensive warfare. The Greeks, heavily armored in bronze, with their large, interlocking shields forming a near-impenetrable wall, the phalanx held the narrow pass with brutal efficiency. Their spears were longer, their armor stronger, and their discipline unmatched. The Persians, many of whom were lightly armored archers and conscripts, charged forward in waves and were cut down in waves. Herodotus tells us that Xerxes leaped from his throne in terror 3 times as he watched his best troops, including his elite guard, the Immortals, failed to break the Greek line. For 2 full days, the 7,000 Greeks held off an army perhaps 30 times their size. The pass became a charnel house, clogged with the bodies of the Persian dead. The Greek strategy was working perfectly. But then came the betrayal. A local Greek man named Ephialtes, hoping for a rich reward from the Persian king, told Xerxes of a hidden mountain path that would allow the Persians to get behind the Greek army and attack them from both sides. The trap was about to be sprung on the defenders. When Leonidas received word from his scouts that the Persians were using the path to surround them, he knew the battle was lost. The position was no longer defensible. He had a choice: retreat and save his men, or stand and fight to the death. He made a decision that would echo through eternity. He ordered the majority of the Greek army to retreat, to fall back and fight another day, saving thousands of lives. But he, his 300 Spartans, and around 700 volunteer Thespians who chose to stay with him, would remain. The contingent of Thebans was forced to stay as hostages. Leonidas's goal had shifted. It was no longer about winning the battle, but about winning the war of ideas. Their sacrifice would be a symbol of defiance, a message to all of Greece that they would rather die as free men than live as Persian slaves. On the 3rd day, the remaining Greeks, now numbering just over 1,000, fought with a fury born of desperation. They no longer held the narrowest part of the pass, but advanced into the open, determined to kill as many Persians as possible before they were overwhelmed. Herodotus says their spears shattered, so they fought with their swords. When their swords broke, they fought with their bare hands and teeth until every last one of them was killed. In tactical terms, Thermopylae was a decisive defeat for the Greeks. The pass was lost. The Persian army marched south unopposed and burned the evacuated city of Athens to the ground. But strategically, Leonidas' sacrifice was a staggering success. The 3-day delay had bought the Greek alliance the precious time it needed. Just as the Persians were burning Athens, the Athenian navy, under Themistocles, lured the massive Persian fleet into the narrow straits of Salamis and annihilated it in a brilliant naval victory. With his supply lines cut and his navy destroyed, Xerxes was forced to retreat with the bulk of his army, leaving a smaller force behind that would be decisively defeated by a unified Greek army at the Battle of Plataea the following year. The sacrifice at Thermopylae was not in vain. It was the down payment on the ultimate Greek victory. In the years that followed, the story of the 300 was transformed into a legend. The Spartans, who were not always popular in Greece, became the ultimate symbols of Greek courage. The battle became the foundational story of Western civilization, a tale of free men standing against an overwhelming empire, of duty over death, of sacrifice for a greater cause. So, while the Hollywood version of shirtless warriors fighting mythical beasts is a fantasy, the reality is far more compelling. The real story of Thermopylae is one of strategy, of a coalition of rival states working together, and of a calculated sacrifice that inspired a nation to unite and save itself. It is a testament to the idea that it is not the size of the army that matters most, but the size of its resolve. At the Histofy, we don't just tell stories, we dig into them. If you believe history is the greatest story ever told, subscribe, or ancient wars, lost empires, and real human drama are coming. This was the Histofy. I'll see you in the next one.